The period after World War II, from the 1950s to the 70s, is known as a time of affluence because it was a time of massive economic growth in the United States. The prices of goods remained pretty stable, right? They weren't rising. The prices weren't rising like it would be during inflation. The unemployment rate, it remained pretty low. And for many, growing standards of living continued until 1973. So basically, you have wages for industrial workers increasing dramatically during this time, right? And this is still a time where you have a good amount of industrial workers. Deindustrialization hasn't been completed yet, okay? So their wages actually doubled. However, while unions were victorious in raising wages, employers increasingly mechanized their industries, you see, so that they could replace workers with machines. And this eventually would lead to a decline in industrial workers, right? So it's starting already in that time, deindustrialization, okay? So less industrial workers, more machines doing their jobs, okay? So the number of individuals involved in the agricultural sector also declined due to mechanization around this time. Okay, so not as many farm workers were needed, so they end up migrating out of these farming regions in the South and they're looking for work, right? Because remember, we had talked about in the South, there were a number of sharecroppers, the issue of crop lien with small farmers, right? So less and less people are involved in the agricultural sector, okay, as we start moving into the 1950s. Government contracts also played a pretty important role in boosting the economy, as government spending led to the rise of industries in the West. Okay, so you got factories that are dedicated to building aircraft and weaponry, right? The government also built multiple military bases and shipyards in the South. And this is going to create jobs and contribute to the local economies, right? Because people from all over the country sign up for the military. They go to these military bases. It increases the population. They spend money in the local economy, okay? So this is what is called the military industrial complex, where government spends huge amounts of money and private industries begin to develop and grow, which become dependent on that government spending, the government contracts, right? So even though there's no war, right, World War II is over, you still have the war machine in perpetual development. So that's where you start seeing more and more money going to the military, right, to keep America safe. Okay, military industrial complex. It leads to great power in the hands of these private industries that are making all of this money from those government contracts. Okay. As more people moved to the suburbs, especially in the West, there was an increased demand for housing, which led to huge growth for the housing industry. Think about where the housing industry was during the Great Depression, right? It was pretty much stagnant. There's no construction going on. But in the 1950s, all the way into mid 70s, the housing market was booming. And you got to fill these houses with all the cool new appliances, right? So that led to a boom for consumer goods, right? Selling a bunch of consumer goods to fill up these houses in the suburbs. So you got a bunch of people buying TVs and dishwashers, and you got to have AC, right? Got to have air conditioning, especially if you live in Arizona. And if you can't afford these appliances, that's all right. Get a credit card. That's right. It's normal, right? Get a credit card, go into debt. You got to participate in the consumer culture, right? It's very important. It's part of freedom, right? The consumer's freedom, right? All right. So economic freedom, like that idea of economic freedom, to participate in the consumer culture. And with people moving out to the suburbs, they got to have a car too, right? Because they got to go to work, right? Got to commute, got to go shopping in the city, get those appliances. And so this is going to create demand that will lead to a boom for the auto industry as well in Detroit, right? In the 50s and 60s. So ultimately, 50s and 60s are a pretty good time for some in the United States, right? Especially those who have industrial jobs, those who haven't lost their jobs to mechanization.